CatDV and Premiere Pro. I've got with me some very well qualified individuals to help me in this endeavor. And I think before we get into it, I'd like to introduce these guys. And if you wouldn't mind, chaps, just going through, and what I'll do is probably call on each of you individually so that we don't have a kind of moment of pausage. So I'm going to work from left to right on my screen and ask you guys to introduce yourselves, and then we'll talk about what we're going to kind of cover in the webinar and what hopefully we're going to what knowledge we're going to impart with these chaps helping me out. So Dave, Mr. Clack, would you like to start off and introduce yourself and tell everybody?
Absolutely. So hello, I'm Dave Clack, and in Quantum, I'm the VP and General Manager for Cloud Software and Analytics, which is the new home for CatDV within the Quantum organization. So I'm responsible for everything to do with the product, how we make it better for our customers, how we take it to market, and all that cool stuff, as well as being part of the executive team and so how the organization works as a whole.
Thank you. Mr. Levens, would you do the same?
Hello, Skip Levens. I drive StoreNext product marketing and solutions for media and entertainment, and that includes products like StoreNext, StoreNext 7, and then the appliances that help showcase and deliver StoreNext 7, like the H4000 converged appliance, and of course help support Mr. Dave Clack and all the great ways that CatDV works on our platform.
Thank you, Skip. And Niels, if you'd
Thanks, Rupert. Hi, everybody. Neil Stevens, Senior Solutions Consultant for Broadcast and Pro Video Workflows at Adobe. So we pride ourselves on making amongst the best in class of creative desktop tools. But I guess my focus is really making sure that you get the most from them when they're glued to other systems and vendors that are out there.
Thank you, Niels. My name is Rupert Watson. I'm the Sales Director for Media and Entertainment or Media and Broadcast in Jigsaw 24, and we obviously sell both CatDV and Quantum and Premiere Pro. And I imagine you all know, but I guess if you don't, it's probably worth pointing out that recently Quantum acquired Squarebox, who are the manufacturers of CatDV, which is a product that's obviously been around for an incredibly long time. But I can remember CatDV back when it used to catalog DV tapes, but that's probably not something I ought to admit to too readily. But it's obviously developed and expanded its capabilities significantly since then, and obviously it's now a part of the Quantum stable. And I think we'll explore a little bit later on what that means and how that might affect the way in which you kind of regard both products and possibly how they combine. So as far as this webinar is concerned, what we wanted to do was present to you the ways in which it can power your productivity. So clearly one of the challenges in the world of video editing and asset management and so on is the kind of exponential increase of data. If you're talking about reality TV shows or whatever, there's just more and more digital data. I think if you talk to our storage colleagues in Quantum, they probably call it unstructured data, which basically is a polite way of saying total chaos. And so if you've got storage, which solves the problem of storing your unstructured data, how do you structure it without actually going around, putting it into lots of individual folders and trying to organize it at a file system level? And so I think what we're going to try and get into today is how CatDV assists you in finding and kind of cataloging what you want without unnecessary kind of housekeeping that isn't necessarily a useful set of housekeeping, and works with Quantum and obviously with Premiere Pro to give you what hopefully is a set of tools that allow you to get your job done faster, better, cleaner, more efficiently. So without further ado, let's talk about that in a bit more detail. So what I think I'd like to talk to you, Skip, about is like it is a challenge. If you're an editor and you've got all this content and so on, how do you sort of see the combination of CatDV and Quantum making that more efficient? How do you improve that user experience for the customers?
It is a real challenge, and in fact, it looks like one of these sort of generational challenges. I mean, if we thought HD to 4K was going to stress and strain the system that supports your workflows, I mean, today all the OTT folks, channels, and the way that you have to deliver not just a TV show a week. It's Netflix wants the entire season at once. So it's you know, everything has gotten more complex, and you know, and in a time of disruption when we can't always all be back in our facility, it's, you know, you have to really think about, how do I extend this workflow beyond my core facility? How do I let remote contributors contribute? And then, exactly as you say, I mean, how do we not get content all over the place that just leads to, when it's time to do, you know, to do a fix or respond to some notes, say, wow, where's that piece of content? It really is a challenge. I mean, and I think a generational one even.
Yeah, and I might just go in as a bit of an overlay on that. So I mean, I guess there's two angles on it. There's getting in new content from a shoot, where you might have an assistant editor that is grabbing shots, that's doing some light tagging and some curation of just what's come off the camera, and then what's going to go into the craft edit, right through to maybe even doing rough cuts and subclipping and such like. And so getting that process as slick as possible, and doing so in a way that is collaborative and many people can work on it at the same time, so you can make it super quick. CatDV is really cool at that, really simple. We've got loads of interfaces that help us with that. Some of them connected up to AI, some of them using proper human kind of intelligence that we've built in. So it's kind of getting new content in, and then, you know, being able to reuse existing B-roll content, being able to understand how much that content's being used or where it's being used elsewhere. Those are the kind of things that CatDV can help with, again, to try and help that, you know, be better, faster, and cheaper by using CatDV in the process and saving a pile of stress too.
And so one of the kind of things that occurred to me while we were just having that conversation was that, you know, I remember back in the days when Avid introduced Interplay, they talked about this idea of non-linear production as a sort of class of activity. I mean, is that to some extent what we're talking about here, is the ability to do all sorts of different things and different job roles to be able to satisfy their needs with respect to storage and media, whatever time in the process as they need to? I'm thinking particularly, say, you know, someone who's doing social media marketing around, you know, the film, you know, they want to get hold of assets that allow them to start doing kind of teaser trails on Facebook or whatever it were. So they presumably can self-serve in CatDV, even though you're talking potentially about a system that contains, you know, fairly sensitive assets at that stage. You know, can you control access and secure the assets and make sure that people can only get at what you want them to get at? Completely.
Those use cases, kind of so teasers for feature films or promos in broadcast for normal programming, they're big use cases for CatDV. We have tens, if not hundreds, of customers that do that. You know, advertising, same kind of stuff, and absolutely being able to configure security so that only the right people can see the right things at the right time. Being able to set up links that expire, links that have passwords on them, all that kind of cool stuff. And then with our more cloud-oriented deployments, being able to share a subset of those assets that maybe are watermarked with folks outside the organization, so people can really make good choices about how widely to share their content and their appetite for risk when they do.
Interesting.
What's really impressive about CatDV is that you can start with a core set of services, and it has this notion of worker nodes, and it's so extensible. It's like that the same base installation you might get started with as a small team, as a company grows and you start extending it, and like the social advertising and wanting to extend it, maybe, you know, you want a team of outside experts to start tagging and going through content. You can sort of flow and adapt as, you know, as you take on new projects, and they work extremely well together. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're going to get into it. I'm sure the people watching will want to kind of see what we're talking about as well, and understand what the latest, which is partly what we're here to show you, the things you can do in it are. But I think one final thing I'd like just to quickly kick around is that it seems to me, as a reseller of these kind of software products and editorial products, that we're entering a period of history where, in a sense, the tools like, you know, CatDV, the asset management tools, the kind of the productivity enhancers and organizational tools, and the kind of asset sprawl sort of limiters are becoming, in a sense, the defining kind of productivity acquisition, and to some extent the editorial decision making is coming downstream of that. And I think to that extent, I would observe that the way in which Premiere Pro has developed this panel ecosystem, which allows, obviously in this instance, CatDV, to operate inside of Premiere Pro in a way that allows the editorial staff to access all of the good stuff, but not limiting it because obviously people who aren't running Premiere Pro can also access it through, you know, the various other ways in which you can interact with it. But do you guys, is that something you guys are seeing as well, that fundamentally these decisions are being made kind of upstream of the editorial world, and that the editorial world is following into, following what I'm saying, so following into the kind of asset management layer?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll take that first while other folks think maybe. And I think, you know, we've always advocated, or for some time at least, that when assets first come in, they come into CatDV before then being shared with whichever editing platform and creative platform. Because, you know, our panel doesn't just work in Premiere, After Effects, InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop too. So we'd encourage folks to kind of get the content into CatDV first. Let us make sure that it's secure, MD5 it, maybe archive it and store it in some cool places like StoreNext, like ActiveScale, and all the other great things that we've got in the stable. So I think it's pretty important to get stuff in. But one of the reasons we love working with Adobe, and I think we are on our, I was thinking about it this morning, I think we're on our 5th iteration of the CatDV panel for Adobe Premiere, and maybe our 3rd technology choice. We were the very first asset management product to have a panel in Adobe Premiere, and I think that indicates our passion to have the right tools for the right people in the right place. So, you know, CatDV is great, but you've got a creative editor that's trying to get some stuff done, and we just don't want to get in the way. So that we jumped on the panel architecture as soon as it was announced, and clearly others have followed now. But and you know, we're on our 5th iteration. We're constantly adding new capabilities to it. In fact, one of the reasons we love doing these webinars is to get feedback about where we should be taking stuff next. We've got some great ideas. Ultimately, we want to build the right things that are really going to help our customers to do more.
That's a fantastic cue there, Dave, just to sort of mention, which I didn't earlier. Obviously, we've got a Q&A and a chat session running here. So if you've got anything you'd like to either ask us to expand on in the moment, feel free to jump into the chat and say, you know, talk about that more, please, or talk about it less. And or any questions that you'd like answered. Obviously, we'll talk later and take questions at the end, but if you've got anything that you'd like answered during the kind of demonstration or the chat, please do jump in. So actually, to that point, why don't we, James, are you ready to show the demo? I think it'd be worth jumping into demonstrating what we're talking about here and show some of the activities around what's new, and then perhaps at the end of it, Skip, if you wouldn't mind picking out what is currently, what are the new things in the kind of combination of CatDV and quantum storage, and perhaps any other aspects of the kind of the future that we want to kind of tease. So James, if you would like to show us a demo, I'll sit back and watch.
A new Premiere project, or I would if I could find the right option. There we are. You know, I'm going to call this episode 1, you know, as the project name. So to start with, you have to create a project, and I'm just going to create that locally in my downloads folder, as all good editors do, obviously. So once I've done that, I need to tweak some of the options in my panel once it's created that project. So you have this little settings cog up here in the top right. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it that I want to enable remote working. So this is telling the Premiere panel that I won't have direct connection to the media. So therefore, it will need to download the proxies to my local machine for me. So I check that, and I need to give it, you know, a path to where it's going to store those files when it downloads them. So in my case, I've just put that in a temp folder on my C drive. It could be on a fast external hard drive, or, you know, it works on Mac and Windows as well. The other thing I want to turn on is check in and check out. And this basically turns on some additional buttons in the panel that's going to allow me to check in and check out the projects. There is a final option, which is to check in markers and user fields. So this is more if you're going to add additional logging data in Premiere, so additional markers, or you're going to change things like, you know, before we saw the animal in the bin, or the, you know, location in the bin, and you want to change your logging data there. Don't turn that on by default, because often people want CatDV to have a set of markers that are kind of shared between the team, but they might want their editors to add some additional markers during the edit, but they don't necessarily want to push all those markers back. So we've kind of made that configurable, so you can choose whether you want to push the markers you've added in Premiere back. So I'm going to leave that turned off for the moment. So I've got my new Premiere project file called episode 1, and in the same way, I can go and find some clips to use. So as I say, this is a different system now. So I've got Desert Clip 1 and Desert Clip 2. So once I've found those and I'm happy with those, I can then import those into my system. and it's going to warn me that the high res is offline, so that's okay. I can offline them, but you'll see it's actually transferring the proxies now in the background. So it's going to the CatDV server, and it's going and fetching those proxies and bringing them to my local machine. So if we look at one of the properties of the clip, you'll see that the high res location, the media path, is the sort of location back in the facility. So mine's a Linux server, so this is sort of Linux style path. But the proxy media is actually located on my local machine in that temporary file. And the reason we don't want to change the high res path is that we wanted to allow workflows so that you can go and do rendering, back in the facility, for example. So, if you've got, Premiere clients that you can remote into back at base, or you've got Adobe media encoders or things like that, we didn't want to, mess around with the high res path in the Premiere project. So I can start building a timeline, and I don't think I'm going to be getting hired as an Adobe Premiere anytime soon, Dave. So I think you're probably safe for a bit. Again, it's brought in all those sort of markers and things that that are on that clip. I can rename my timeline, so I'll call this I don't know, version 1 or something. So once I finish building up my Premiere project, I can then use the CatDV panel to kind of send this Premiere project back to the CatDV server. And this is going to allow another user, in my case, Dave's going to be my guinea pig as usual. So that's going to allow Dave to use that Premiere project. Before I do, what I need to do is I need to file it in a catalog. So everybody who's familiar with CatDV will know that catalogs are our kind of unit of collecting things together, but basically clips or assets go into catalogs. And in the same way, when I check in my project, I need to identify where that's going to live. So I've got a production group here called projects, and I've got something called CatDV in there, webinars, and I've got episode 1. It's got nothing in it at the moment, it's blank. So what I can do is I can check in that project. So Premiere is going to save that project file, and then it's going to upload that Premiere project file to the CatDV server. Okay, and you'll see it's now appeared in the catalog, and it actually has a path basically where it uploaded it. So if we swap over to our web client now, you should see that again in my catalog structure, I've got my projects production group here. I've got episode 1, and I've now got my Premiere project. We've added some special metadata fields that you can add to your panels, including one that will actually show the contents of that Premiere project. So just to explain how that's working, we're not inspecting the Premiere project file to pull that data out. That's kind of, we've been told that's not the correct way of doing things by Adobe. What we're doing is when we check in that project, we're kind of sending all the clip IDs up to the server at the point that we check it in. But what it does mean is I can actually click on these links, and it will take me straight to that clip within my CatDV web interface, so I can see what's linked to in that project. And as Dave alluded to before, that's also going to now allow us to build workflows where you can say, make sure everything in a particular project is archived, or, do counters for saying, desert clip 1 is used in 20 projects and things like that. So once it's checked in, it's left my machine, it's been uploaded to my CatDV server. So that should allow Dave now to pick it up on his system and check it out effectively.
So it's the same. Obviously, I'm looking at the same system as the one that we were just looking at there with Matthew's system. And here is our projects, CatDV webinars, episode 1 catalog in CatDV, and I can see the project that was just checked in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to check that out. And what CatDV is going to do is tell me everything is off. Premiere is going to tell me everything offline, which it is because I've only got the proxies. And then CatDV behind the scenes, as you just saw there, has then downloaded proxies so that I can actually play the content, which is pretty neat. So then what might I want to do? Well, I can mess around with the timeline and change what's in. Have we got a slate in the system I could put like an end slate or something?
Yeah, I've been working hard in After Effects, Dave. I've created an absolute cracker. It's called end slate.
Is it called end slate? Okay. And end slate. Okay, so I'm going to add that into my project. Saying it's offline. Very cool. Now, this time it seems to have come in without having the proxy connected. I'm just going to force it to get that proxy if you don't mind. So
that's an interesting thing to talk about. So Dave's using a function we've got there called attach proxies. And this came from one of our customers that, very much they'd been using Premiere before they had CatDV. So they kind of had lots of projects, and but they'd not been created using this check-in and check-out process that we're demonstrating at the moment. And one of the things they said to us was, wouldn't it be really cool if we could go and now link those proxies to our legacy files? So their kind of workflow is they would open up the Premiere project file while connected to the CatDV server, but then they can relink the proxies. And basically it will go through all the clips in the bin, and it will ask the CatDV server, have you got this high-res file? And if so, what's the proxy for it? It will return the proxy value, and then it will download that proxy. So that's just helped them, work in a slightly different way remotely. So yeah, it's worth showing that. Yeah.
Cool. So then I'm going to drag my slate into the end. Oh, better put it on the right track, otherwise my chief editor gets angry. Oh, it is a lovely piece of After Effects.
It took me hours that, Dave. Don't know.
Yeah, very good. So cool. What am I going to do now? I might save that locally. Very good. But then in CatDV, of course, I'm going to then check that back in. Oh, okay. Before I check in, I must select a target catalog. That is true. I do need to tell it where it's going to go, because of course I found that that end slate somewhere else. I'm going to now go back to my catalog and say, hey, let's check it into the right place. And of course, if somebody else tried to check this project out, CatDV would tell them. So we can see when when a project is checked out in CatDV, we can see that in the metadata in the web client and desktop client, and CatDV uses it when trying to check things out, and will tell you. I mean, you can override it if you really want to. So two people can work on the same thing at the same time, but clearly one at a time is easier. So I'm going to check in anyway. Here we go. And that project is then published back up to the CatDV server. So, if you want to just kind of prove that it worked, then I could ask Matthew to show us it arriving on his system, perhaps.
Yeah, so I can go now check out that version of the project that Dave's uploaded. So again, I go navigate it in my structure. Something we didn't mention earlier, but something that people find quite useful in Premiere workflows is clip lists. So, if you've got people getting good shots or finding material for your editors, then you can use these clip lists, and they appear in the panel as well. So you could have somebody in the web client finding and selecting shots and material. They could add it to a clip list, and then they're available in that Premiere panel. So all the editor would need to do is go and find that clip list, and then bring the clips in from there. So that's quite a useful thing to mention. So I should be able to go and check out that project now. And obviously it originated on my machine, but it's now going to go and download the version that Dave checked in effectively. And we're going to have to offline all the media. But I've now got Dave's version of the timeline, which has got my wonderful end slate in.
Very nice.
That was brilliant. So that gives you a little view of how the CatDV integration with Premiere Pro looks. And obviously, for me, the standout piece of that is obviously the checking in and checking out, because that is the single biggest challenge, I think, in terms of workflow organization, is making sure that your collaborators aren't kind of treading on each other's toes. So that shows, I think, and to your point, Dave, you guys have been at this for a while. That for me, as someone who's worked in the industry for a while, is a sign of how you are involved with the customers, because that kind of neatness, and particularly, I don't know if you did it deliberately or accidentally, it was a very good bit of demo art there, but checking it in the wrong place and exposing the kind of warning that you're doing the wrong thing is a sign, again, that the software's mature to the point where you're trapping kind of potential errors and stopping them being kind of a problem as they go forwards. So Skip, mate, if I can just turn to you, would you mind just giving us a little bit of a kind of tour d'horizon around kind of Quantum and the CatDV acquisition, and why and how you see it being of use and or an accelerator for what Quantum have got planned? Because it's not an immediate, not immediately kind of the kind of acquisition you'd have come to mind. So I'd love to know a bit more about why you guys did it and what you see as the future.
Absolutely. And the reason why I love that demo that Matthew and David did is that it really kind of illustrates this sort of, you can call it sort of the friction of trying to get your creative work done. and I think by working in your tool of choice, Premiere, you can check in and check out, yet retain all these collaborative abilities as a team that's creating them. And one of those kind of points of friction is, what is the storage supporting that workflow? So Quantum is is well known and drives many mission critical workflows in a number of industries, and decades of investment in the technology that makes that possible. But at the heart of it is StoreNext, which is a collaborative shared file system that can deliver shared storage to these editors and to the server running a solution like a CatDV at extreme speed, and then let you apply these different types of storage at different stages of the content you create. You could go with a converged appliance. It's a complete environment. It's something very only to you. You can apply something like NVMe flash storage if you have a bottleneck somewhere, perhaps in rendering or ingest. Scale out and then archive off to something like your own private object storage or tape or cloud. It's all managed inside StoreNext, which can move those files back and forth. Then on top of that, when you bring in the capabilities of CatDV that has all this expertise in analyzing files and moving files back and forth, and now you're pairing these capabilities together, it's I think you can kind of see the future and where this is going. It's tools like CatDV let people work visually. I mean, if you create, you're probably a very visual person. You can organize things in catalogs by teams. It's just designed to enable collaboration. And then on top of all the different ways to move content in something like StoreNext, CatDV itself, you can define these automation levels and to move things back and forth and reach out and to cloud-based tools to enhance a content library. And the way it all works together is StoreNext can deliver supremely fast native level file sharing, and then expand to pick up, perhaps you have your own render farm, and then move those files off, yet still retain contact with them, both within StoreNext and within CatDV. And then CatDV is your user interface that helps do everything from find, search, and catalog your content, and then automate the movement to the different stages. So it's the two of them together. I can tell you, Matthew is now product manager on CatDV, and Dave, of course, is thinking very deeply and driving the team to apply a lot of this expertise about what's in those files, how to enhance them, and driving that expertise into StoreNext itself. So it's rather exciting for us, but these things get us excited.
It's a sort of workflow or storage orchestration layer, effectively, on top of. So it's taking you from a kind of very fast, industry standard file system to another level where you've got user interactions with it, which were beyond that which StoreNext could deliver natively, and you're potentially running the CatDV server within the Quantum infrastructure. So you've got your storage and your servers that are running all that. You can include the CatDV in that, so you can install CatDV in that setup, or do you need an additional server to run it?
That's a fantastic question. So the latest version of StoreNext, called StoreNext 7, is a dramatic architecture advancement where the components of StoreNext have been virtualized and containerized, so they can now run in a convergent appliance like the H4000 that we just announced. So obviously very large customers have a rack of equipment and storage driving the very fastest performance, but all the functions of that same environment can now be converged into say a 2U appliance. Could also run in the cloud, run on both. So now that StoreNext 7 has made that advancement, there's there's a tremendous amount of possibility. And, so you can imagine a future where CatDV is now integrated in there as well. It's
Yeah.
very exciting.
No, that's really well put. Really well put. Thanks, Skip. And then just to kind of to overlay, maybe answer the question in a slightly different way about how CatDV fits within the Quantum family, if you like. So, as Quantum, our vision is to be the leader in the leader in video and unstructured data solutions, so media entertainment, unstructured data, as we talked about earlier. Well, where does CatDV fit? Well, we want to be the leader in intelligent management and orchestration of that video and unstructured data. And the page before that Skip was just showing says that, no matter where content is, what kind of storage, whether it's cloud or object or online, clearly using StoreNext as the hub that draws a whole pile of stuff together, as well as in CatDV, we still have our multi-vendor strategy. We work well with a whole pile of other storage vendors, as StoreNext works with a whole pile of other asset management platforms.
Yep.
So, but we as the cloud software and analytics group within Quantum intend to build, and we already have many of the best tools to intelligently manage and orchestrate this content. So how do you get content from StoreNext to ActiveScale to S3 or S3-like solutions? Well, CatDV can do that orchestration. CatDV can work out the MD5s. CatDV can work out what's the right time to move things.
So that's interesting. That was a question I was going to ask you about. In terms of, obviously, I'm familiar with StoreNext file system and the idea of affinities, which is essentially the ability to kind of organize your media to move to a different quality of storage or speed of storage. Is that sort of functionality that you either have already or would plan to put into CatDV so that you could at a different user interface level? Because one of the things is the affinity was occasionally a little tricky to kind of trigger, as it were. But is CatDV going to make that easier and more kind of expose it to the kind of user?
So I think my job title is a bit of a spoiler, to be honest. So I'm the general manager of cloud software and analytics is exactly that. So how do we make sure that storage, your content, your unstructured data is being stored in the most cost-effective way, the safest way, understanding how stuff being used? Well, quite a lot people talk about things like policy-based archiving, and the kind of policies that are being set are based on file-based metadata. It's dates, it's kind of dull stuff like that. With CatDV, you can really bring to life a whole pile of much more enriched metadata. So things move to a different archive tier when a project is finished or when an approval has happened. You can just make much more intelligent decisions.
Oh wow! So you can. So one of the things I've always liked a lot about CatDV is the whole checkpointed workflow, as I describe it, which is this idea that you've got individuals in the process where the legal guys need to look at it, or whatever it might be, or the archivists need to look at it. So the BBC, obviously archiving is a big thing, but somebody needs to agree that it can be moved to the archive or whatever. So you're saying you can combine that checkpointed workflow with data migration. So the very fact that the legal guys have signed it off will trigger something that they didn't even know they triggered, effectively, in terms of storage movement.
Exactly that. Yeah. Yes. Short answer.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So I know, guys, that we got a little demo snippet of it, of the interaction between CatDV and the SAN. Is that something we could watch, James? Is now a good time?
Yes, and I can let's see. And then I think I can just go ahead and show it here on my system as well.
That'd be great.
So on my system here, I'm obviously not connected to the main server environment where we're running both StoreNext and CatDV, but by virtue of I'm connected in via VPN to my home facility. And the StoreNext administrator has provisioned some storage for me, and then use something. So I'm not connected via fiber channel, I'm connected via Ethernet. So I can use a technology called the distributed LAN client, where it extends the SAN to me out on Ethernet. And then I get these two volumes that show up once I'm configured. And in this particular case, I can directly inspect the volume we've set up to support this small team's installation. So now it mounts this volume, even though it's on the SAN, sitting in our facility. I can drop ingest files directly in here, and then the worker nodes will automatically move them out of ingest folder into the media folder. and then the proxy files here. And that's just how our particular work group wanted to set it up. You have incredible flexibility to set it up almost anywhere. So I'm directly connected. I can use the CatDV web worker. I can use CatDV Pegasus, et cetera. So it's a tremendous amount of flexibility in how you want to set up your environment.
Very cool. So, Niels, can I ask you, where, from Adobe's perspective, it's it's all very well kind of keeping track of the assets and working and so on. Where do you guys see the CatDV integration with Premiere Pro working for you guys? I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about how and where it kind of it works for you guys and where you see the benefits to the users?
Absolutely. So if I just share my screen briefly. So at Adobe, we are at a point in time where our global user base of Creative Cloud is quite large at this point. So we're in the business of making innovations and features of wide appeal that address needs within a variety of use cases. So increasingly some of the software functionality that we're building, we're focused more and more on productivity as well as creativity, just in terms of doing things with AI, and we have reached a tipping point where Creative Cloud is more cloud in nature than just in name, as it was when it first came out, perhaps 8 years ago now. I think it was just a mechanism for downloading desktop software. But the key thing is that there is no one size fits all approach to the process of asset management and archive and data retrieval and index and searching. There's no two workflows out there that are the same as each other. So we absolutely stand and fall on our panel infrastructure. So it's great to see, and as you said, that CatDV was pretty much the very first integrated panel inside Premiere, and the productivity gains are very tangible. You could put metrics against this. Every click that's saved, not having to go out to the desktop or not having to go out to a separate application. The fact that it's completely integrated into the interface of the tool, and you can count seconds and minutes each day saved in asset retrieval and in asset publishing by just having it integrated right there into the UI of Premiere. So it's great that we have these partnerships and relationships for us not to get in the way of infrastructure, and focus on what we do best in terms of product innovation. So just a few toys that I wanted to talk about that we've been working on in the background. So one of the newer features in Premiere is the text panel. So that's already shipped. That's there now in the current shipping build of Premiere. It's a substantial overhaul of the captions tool that we had before. It's much easier and better to work with. What you're seeing here as well is actually, it's the demo video we saw earlier on loaded into Premiere. I've used the speech to text functionality, which is in beta at the moment, but plan to appear later this year, where we actually use cloud-based AI speech to text transcription, which is very fast, and it then loads that back into the timeline, and you can automatically create a caption track, which is visually editable, as and the clips and segments behave just like they were video clips. So really, truly much better, easier way for working with subtitles and captions, and that workflow follows all the way through to delivery to caption enabled platforms and that kind of thing. Another cool AI feature that we introduced about 18 months ago was auto reframe. So these days, again, delivery requirements are constantly changing, but I think it's probably safe to assume that you're going to need multiple format deliveries at some point in your workflow, whether it's for social or whether it's for, just, I don't know if they still have square screens on airplanes, but Instagram certainly is one-to-one. So you can see here, this again is an AI-driven algorithm that we built by going through a process of what we call gaze analysis It conjures to mind the scene in the Clockwork Orange film for me, but I'm just dating myself a little bit there, I think, where Alex Delarge had his head
you got your eyelids pinned back.
Exactly, yeah. So we did it in reverse. We analysed what people were looking at in the frame when they were watching video in order to identify the key object of interest. So you see here that the girl on the skateboard has been identified, even though she's slightly left of frame. In the 1:1 version, she's been put bang in the center, and same for the 9:16 as well. And crucially, because of the way we now handle graphics in Premiere using MOGATs or motion graphics templates that are essentially After Effects objects loaded into Premiere, it will dynamically reformat and reposition the caption for you as well. So again, creativity and massive productivity gains.
Actually, MOGATs are very cool. I have to say, anybody who's watching who hasn't checked out MOGATs, I'd really encourage you to do it. And the fact that you can create them in After Effects and then store the various parameters that you want to maintain in Premiere, or you want the Premiere editor to be able to fiddle with, which isn't all of them, is really tight.
And there are thousands of them in Adobe stock as well. If you don't want to go to the pains of creating anything, there's a ton of them in the library ready to play with. So again, all big time-saving improvements for various workflows. And just in parting, worth mentioning also a layer in the software that we've introduced for collaboration and project sharing in the box. So that this is very much just management. One of the criticisms leveled at us, particularly compared with other NLEs in the market, was the way that everything is saved in that one project file. So if you're working on a 2-hour feature across 6 reels, with 25,000 clips, it could take you 10 minutes or more to open the project first thing in the morning. And if you've got some kind of instability and you're crashing once or twice a day, you'd soon lost quite a lot of time. So it was apparent that we needed to have a bit of a rethink how project storing worked on the desktop. So what you're seeing now essentially is the new productions panel inside Premiere, which allows us to have multiple concurrent projects open. And then just off to the top left of the screen, you'll also see how that is essentially a window into what the directory structure is on your drive. And when a project is open, you get a little icon with a green pencil, and you get a lock file on the disk so that you have exclusive write access to that. Now, anybody else sitting on that same storage can collaborate with you, and essentially the productions overlay makes sure that nothing, there's no conflict in terms of users working together. But you'll see again down here, I've got 2, I'm going to call them bins, but they're actually projects within the production open. The sequence that you see here is the only item in that project bin, despite the fact that we can see that it has many clips. So a really great way of managing and keeping projects much smaller, such that you can compartmentalize them into whatever sensible way that you might be working. So in this case, we've got a series of dailies projects, a series of scenes projects, reels, miscellaneous, and then conforms and social edits. But the flexibility is there to do whatever you would like with that. So again, we've kind of overhauled that limitation of having big project files that we used to. So there we are, a snapshot.
Thank you, Neil.
No worries.
No, appreciate it, mate. And I have to say, productions is a huge step forward, I would say, in terms of the kind of way in which you manage and deal with large projects. And it has, I think it's fair to say, I think we can admit to the general public, there have been the odd criticism of the kind of speed and sort of time it takes to open large projects. And there's been this sort of this assumption that you can only do kind of short form on Premiere, which has kind of been knocking around. But I think this productions piece is a huge step forward, and it really makes it, that whole kind of criticism disappears into the ether. So guys, I wanted to quickly touch on, I know it's a bit fashionable, but I wanted to get your various thoughts on remote editing in terms of, clearly Quantum are famous for large high performance shared storage, which is generally speaking assumed to be on premise. That doesn't necessarily at the first blush kind of lend itself to working from home in your bedrooms and your bathrooms and your kind of front rooms and so on. So do you want to just give us a quick idea, Dave and Skip, around how you would deploy a Quantum file system, whether it be a small, modestly priced one for a small production outfit, who want to enable their various editors, geographically dispersed as they are, to kind of get the job done, where previously they might expect to have been in a facility or a production company. How would you set about building and deploying something with that aim in mind?
Shall I let you go first, Skip?
Well, so I would just say, I mean, so one, you can extend the SAN to people that aren't on site, but now that StoreNext 7 has been containerized and virtualized, some very interesting possibilities open up, and we did just launch our very recently the H4000, which takes advantage of all this containerized functionality, and now the proposition.
Sorry, mate, can I just I'm just going to quickly ask you for the less geeky, and hopefully I don't necessarily include myself in that, but just containerization. What does that mean? Why people interested in what does that do? How does it change things?
It's so containerization is essentially the proposition that I can take the functionality that might exist in separate pieces of configured server and solution, and I can now virtualize them onto an independent container. And in fact, I could have fleets of them. I could then programmatically configure them and deploy them and spin them up or spin up more of them. So you can see this gives you a whole new level of flexibility, where before you might have to deploy physical hardware, physical hardware, physical hardware.
Right. So they're like little computers.
Yeah, well said. And there's a lot of terms for it, but a software-defined architecture now opens the door to where you can programmatically, so when your connection between these two systems is also virtual, well, now I can programmatically sort of connect them, change settings on them, and do all this incredibly quickly in a way that's very repeatable. So one example is the H4000 that we have here that takes advantage of StoreNext 7 and all of its improvements, and looks a bit like this. So new user interface, and when you can now, to your point, is take this entire StoreNext environment and deploy it in something that's, essentially I can rack a system, and in a matter of minutes, I can start plugging in my editors and we can all get to work as a small team. It just opens up a lot of flexibility in how you can expand an existing environment, perhaps in like a new department or office, or customers that were maybe working on other storage and want some of that performance and on premise to to finally adopt something that helps them deliver their work faster. So again, very small taste of these new possibilities.
And I'll overlay answering from a different perspective, if you like, which is so in the demo that we saw, I'm surprised, Ruth, but you didn't mention haircut and glasses yet, because I was quite shocked. It's amazing what a difference a few months of lockdown can do, isn't it? I'm going to distract myself a little bit. In fact, I may well have done.
No, that's fine. So remote workflow is where I was going to.
So remote work, yeah. So look, so when I talked about the Cloud Software and Analytics group being responsible for intelligent management and orchestration of video and unstructured data, that's what we're talking about. So what we saw in the demo was a pre-canned kind of out-of-the-box experience that allows us to have on-premise storage with proxies coming down, so I can do an edit and then link the online later. Online masters later. But because CatDV is so flexible, and as Neil said, everybody's workflows are just a bit different, then how to handle those remote workflow discussions is exactly that, to have a discussion. We've got so many tools in the kit bag that says, okay, you want to store your masters on object storage or even in the cloud, and you want the proxies to come down automatically. Well, CatDV's got so many hooks and APIs that kind of stuff is just really cool. I was talking to a major news network just last week, and they want to use Adobe, and our Premiere panel doesn't work quite the way they want it to, but with a few tweaks, we can make it handle their workflow exactly for them, right? So that extensibility that we've always had in CatDV, and the hooks and the APIs really help us to give something that's tailored to a customer and to save the time and money that Niels was starting to talk about as well.
I'm on mute. Right, that's great. So in essence, guys, you're talking about the ability to, you've got somewhere that you want, to store your primary assets, which are obviously the camera originals and the high value data that you've acquired in whichever way you want. You then store that centrally on a StoreNext SAN or some other storage if you're not working with StoreNext, heaven forbid. But ultimately you can manage the workflow. You can create the proxies automatically on ingest, and you can generate a scenario in which you either kind of pre-deploy them to the various endpoints, or you can summon them as you want. So that allows you to kind of get the best of both worlds, really. And then obviously when you finish the offline editorial with the proxies, you can then go back to the primary assets in the StoreNext file system and kind of finish the job. So that's great. I'm aware of the time. We've actually amazingly nearly taken up an hour. I'm stunned. It has genuinely flown by. So I just want to kind of quickly wrap it up by just kind of recapping really in terms of what we're talking about here, and just to identify that from a kind of Quantum StoreNext Premiere Pro point of view, it now enables you for a very sort of at a very low entry point. I think it's fair to say you can get into a sort of hyper-converged infrastructure, and not only is the I think that the kind of the entry point in terms of price relatively low compared to what it used to be in the old days, but I think the level of complexity, would it be fair to say, Skip, has been reduced somewhat by this idea of containerization. So before, where you had lots of different kind of metal all racked up and kind of fairly complex to configure, do you think it's true to say that with StoreNext 7 and the new appliances, you've got a product that's simpler to deploy and kind of plug together, and particularly if you're moving stuff around? For example, if you're on set capture, I know that other products have been quite popular in the on-set post-production market, where it's important that it's kind of a small footprint and quick to kind of plug it all up, and important that you don't kind of mess that up. Do you think that's a kind of a market that is perhaps more attainable now for a StoreNext appliance?
Yeah, very much so. And it's where you may have had to sort of have multiple panels and windows open, those are all now unified in StoreNext 7, and the amount of thought going into the sort of workflow to set up the storage for your users that just want to get to their solution, or as you say, wheel something on set, ingest very quickly. You can immediately start working on it. It's fantastic application. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, guys, thank you very much. I think we probably ought to go to, if there are any questions, which I haven't seen anybody yet pop in, but if they want to, can have a quick look in the chat. And James, if you've got anything, if you want to draw my attention to, and then we'll kind of tuck into those at this stage. I'm just going to wait for anybody to type in. It's okay. Oh, right. Yes. So how do you get the panel? Where did it come from, Dave? Do you have to? Is it something you need to purchase as part of your CatDV, or is it free? How do you get hold of a panel?
Yeah. So as Niels was talking about earlier, trying to minimize the number of clicks for folks that have CatDV is our objective. And so the way the panel is accessed is if you have a CatDV desktop license, so the installed version of CatDV, not the web versions we were looking at, then you get a version of the Adobe panel that can run on that same machine. So you can either choose to use our desktop client or the panels, and there's no penalty for whichever user interface you choose to use. Clearly, some folks may not want to use our desktop client. They may only want to use our web-enabled technologies, in which case you can purchase the panel separately, just like any other CatDV client.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so this is one. So what? How easy is it to adopt this environment if you're coming from Avid? What's is there a big learning curve, do you think? I mean, if you're an interplay.
Let me start with the kind of CatDV side. And so with CatDV's capabilities, being able to read DNX media, being able to read Avid bins, being able to understand AAFs, then we have a kit of parts that make it quite easy to ingest content. And we talked earlier about CatDV being the hub, no matter what choice of editing or creative platforms you're using, right? So being able to move from less open and less flexible tools into CatDV and then out to Premiere, and the Adobe tool set is something that we enable. They're usually kind of fairly custom because people use Avid in many different ways and have been using it for often tens of years. And so, we've done a major thing for a big studio in Hollywood recently, where we're helping them to make a transition away. And CatDV has the tools to help make it all happen, and I should let others then talk about other aspects of that answer.
Well, so ultimately, it's an equivalent. I think it would be fair for you guys to say, yeah, you feel confident that if you're running an operation in one kind of ecosystem, it wouldn't necessarily, there's nothing to stop you, adopting a CatDV StoreNext combo with Premiere, and you can get the job done, which is pretty cool.
Well said.
Yeah, I mean, we love working with Adobe because Adobe is open and it helps us to get stuff done. So absolutely, yes. And
obviously, one of the advantages is you've got all the assets in, I think you mentioned InDesign, so all of the integrations you've got, presumably, if you're doing a round tripping with AEP from After Effects in your Premiere time and all that, you can store all of that data on StoreNext, you can find it all in CatDV, you can get all of the benefits of that kind of integrated Creative Cloud workflow in Premiere. So for those people who are jonesing for that, it's a simple unified infrastructure that you can achieve all of that.
So our richest set of capabilities are oriented around Adobe Premiere, but absolutely our panel works in all those other applications as well to unlock the collaboration and the efficiency benefits too.
So I've got a quick question around the kind of the way in which you're going to market Skip. So I know the H4000s, clearly with the containerization, it's intended that you can run other stuff on it, and potentially it comes with a packaged solution. Is there anything that is that something that that kind of presages some sort of self-contained delivery where you get all of this kind of at the point of sale, so you don't have to configure it and build it yourself?
So I have to say you're a futurist because it's when you have a converged environment, then it certainly does open the door to not just these sort of hybrid and hybrid cloud environments, but can you not also add other virtual machines, say possibly with CatDV on as well? So that's absolutely possible in this new architecture. And beyond that, I would defer to Mr. Dave Clack.
Dave?
I think you're barking up the right tree, Rupert. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely fashionable, isn't it? There's definitely other products in the market that allow you to combine the storage with the asset management and all of that good stuff. And ultimately, actually, one question I did want to ask you was about AI. Are you able to integrate with any kind of artificial intelligence services in a kind of integrated manner? So if you've got a CatDV and you've got proxies, you can submit those to cloud-based artificial intelligence services and get the data back and then incorporate that metadata back in CatDV?
Yeah. So look, CatDV's got, again, all the tools in the kit bag. And what we've done is and really some nice APIs. So we've written some very easy to use encapsulated plugins for our worker that just on a single page let you say, okay, let's do speech to text, let's do celebrity detection, let's even with some of the recognition stuff in Amazon say, oh, find me the slates, find me the black frames, find me the credits and the titles, find me the not safe for work stuff, do object detection in your videos or your stills. And I think so we've got integrations with Amazon, with Microsoft, and with Google, all as plugins that come kind of bundled with our high-end server, the CatDV Pegasus server, that can handle the increased metadata that these things generate. And these things aren't a heavy lift to integrate. Most of these firms that provide these amazing AI tools and machine learning tools, they want folks like us to use them. So they make it easy for us to integrate. So if folks want to use other AI and machine learning tools that aren't on our list, then we should absolutely have the conversation, and we can usually make it pretty cost effective to add something. I have said for years, I don't want people to not buy CatDV because we don't work with other stuff. We're still an absolutely multi-vendor company. And seeing the demo of the captions in Adobe, I'm kind of thinking, oh, how can we get those and make sure that those can be harvested from Adobe, come into CatDV as markers, be edited in both places easily, so you don't pay twice for transcription, all that kind of cool stuff.
Store them for use. Brilliant. Well, guys, I could chat to you for hours. Unfortunately, our time is up, and I think it's probably time to wrap this up. But I hope everyone's found this useful, and thank you very much for joining us. If you want to get further information, please feel free to email broadcast@jigsaw24.com, and we will furnish you with that information. And indeed, we'll probably be stalking you for the rest of your life anyway, because of the way digital marketing works. So feel free to expect an email tomorrow from us. And if you'd like to follow up with us, we'd be delighted to provide any or every bit of information we can for you. So chaps, with that, I will say thank you very much indeed. and hopefully see you soon in the real world, as is now customary to say in these events.
Look forward to it.
Very cool.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.